Hi guys, welcome back to the Campbell Academy podcast, Nothing But the Truth with me, Colin Campbell. This is the podcast that talks about atypical pathways to success and finds out the secrets from people who have become successful in their own fields. Today is a bit of an extraordinary personal broadcast for me because we'll be chatting to Louis Dunne.
It'll be a Monday morning swim. So yeah, starting winter training at 6 a.m. on Monday to do a swim, and then be working straight afterwards till mid-morning, like lunchtime. And then Monday afternoon will be a bike ride of some sort, whether that be efforts or up to 2 hours, and then a swim in the evening. Tuesday is work in the morning, and then a gym session with Gregor, who sponsors me and is personal trainer, and then a track session on the Tuesday evening, which it's only 2 hours of work on a Tuesday, but it's all high intensity and key sessions. And then Wednesday, I have off work, so I like to call it the full-time triathlete day of swimming, long bike ride, massage, and then swim again. So all about recovery and training.
So for anyone who follows the blog, you will understand that Louis has quite a backstory. And this podcast is linked to a blog from February of this year called Introducing Louis Dunne. And so Louis is going to talk about what it takes to be a budding professional endurance athlete. And I think that once you've heard some of this story, you might feel quite insignificant in what you think is hard work and what you think is dedication. And I really hope that it inspires us all to be a little bit more focused and a little bit better. Hope you enjoy. Hello, Louis.
Hello.
How you doing? Welcome to the podcast room.
Thank you for
A little
inviting me.
A little bit weird. Obviously, I have a slightly different tack on the podcast today, because in the chair that you're sat in, we're at 5, Nancy, of this new iteration, and so we've had some famous people and some external people who've been really talented and gifted. And now we've got somebody from inside. So you're the first person from inside the business to be on the podcast, and we'll probably have some other people. So we'll have to explain to the one audience member,
Which is me.
do you listen to it?
Yeah.
All right, good. Right, you listen to this one.
No.
Right, okay. So we'll have to explain to the guys that listen to the backstory about not the backstory, but why we've invited you on, or why I've invited you on. So the purpose of the podcast in its reinvention was to talk about atypical pathways to success. That was one of the main reasons to do that, because a lot of the people that I come across who are very successful in their chosen field have not had a class route to that. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. And so that would mean that if I've invited you onto the podcast, I would consider that you are very successful in your chosen field. Okay?
Well, yeah, maybe not yet, but
But that's that. I think we'll probably explore that concept of not finished yet. Okay.
yeah. Okay.
And also the concept of imposter syndrome we might explore today as well. So before we begin, you should introduce yourself to the guys.
So yeah, my name's Louis Dunne. I'm a part-time software manager here at the Campbell Clinic and trying to be a full-time aspiring triathlete. So just a year out of A-levels and trying to pursue the dream of triathlon.
Okay, that's a fair introduction. So you have a backstory, Louis, that follows you, whether you want it or not. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the tragic stuff that happened back in 2016. So we're not going to explore that today. But there's a blog that I've got that I wrote about that went out this year in February, the Introducing Louis Dunne blog. And so we'll link that to this, okay? So if you want to go back to Louis' backstory of when he lost his dad and what happened there, and get more information just about the backstory of that, and I would recommend you do that. And we'll reference through that a little bit here, but we're not going to go deep into that because that's not what we're here for. But you can read that blog, and that'll be all in there, okay? And so because I think probably as we start to explore some things that will help people that are listening to this, hopefully, which that's what it's for, we'll pay lip service to that. We'll reference that a little bit, okay? Because I think, in the developing annals of the Louis Dunne story and the success story that's unfolding, I think it probably, time zero almost goes back to that sort of time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It does what I see.
Yeah.
And of course there was a Louis Dunne before that, but he was like 13 and people were pushing him up hills on his bike and stuff like that, you know? And I think we should go back to that point, back to those times and say, your chosen route to success now involves swimming and cycling and running. So I'm going to say, what's your like earliest memories of that stuff that you now spend so much of your life on?
So the earliest memory is when I was 7. So the triathlon you start when you're 8. It's in TriStar, and it's 50-meter swim, or like 2K bike, and then 200-meter run. But there was a triathlon in Clifton just down the road, and my dad knew the organisers. So as he would, he'd get me in a year younger by asking for a favour. So I was 7. I was on a little grey mountain bike type BMX with one gear, and I remember doing that, doing a jog around the warm up field, and then doing that triathlon. And I don't remember much about it other than I probably came last, and there were much bigger kids and bigger bikes there, and it started from there. So I did junior triathlon, started with For Life Triathlon Club, and then drifted out of it when I was maybe 12, especially the swimming area, but did triathlon and then picked it back up in 2016, like properly focusing on it. So I've always done it, but then after 2016, it was wanting to pursue it as much as I could.
2016, because in that, your dad got you into the swim squad or the academy.
Yeah.
At For Life, yeah?
Yes, in 2014.
Because I remember conversations about that, because that was a big deal. Your swimming wasn't quite good enough then to get in.
Yeah.
And being your dad, he was quite disagreeable. And in the best part, in the Malcolm Gladwell style of way, because he was extremely entrepreneurial, your dad, even though he didn't have a business, because he just refused to accept the status quo, didn't he?
Yeah.
Always. Right?
Yeah.
So I remember the conversations having with him about, he was desperate that you got into that swim squad, but you had to hit a time, didn't you? I can't remember what it was.
It was the For Life Academy, and the main aim was because they do a trip to the Alps in May. And that was why I wanted it. And Dean Hughes, who won that, it was 6 minutes for 400 meters, and I was 6:10 or 6:15 or something. And we really tried it, and it wasn't quite there. But he was just telling Dean, "It's like, please take him. Like, you won't regret it. He'll show you why." Because the bike was above the standard, and the one was just about there. So he's like, "Please, just ignore the swim."
That was very your dad, though.
Yeah. So he pushed it as much as he said, until Dean said yes, and then I got in.
Because I remember he also took you to get you to Planet X to buy a bike and stuff, and and then coming back with a whole load of stuff they'd managed to skank off Planet X, because he was always, what else can I have and what else can you get in? And a sort of really sort of disagreeable, entrepreneurial, and not in a, when I say disagreeable, I don't mean people don't like it. That's not what disagreeable is. Disagreeable is why. Why? Because we'll kind of have a free helmet with the bike, and they go, no, well, why not? And they go, oh, well, let's see what we can do. And it was that, he was always able to do that kind of stuff. And so it was interesting you say that you sort of drifted out and came back in, because you kind of dipped your toe in a bit and then came out, and you were kind of going, at that stage you were the same as everybody else. You were just turning up at For Life and doing a bit of work and seeing what happened, weren't you?
Yeah, I was doing most sports that you can think of, a lot of football. But it was like, we did swimming in Portland, and I just wasn't enjoying it for whatever reason. I was getting bored of it. I wasn't enjoying it. And that's why. So I didn't really drift from triathlon. I did the triathlon, but the swimming, I left doing it, 3 times, 4 times a week, which is what you need to be doing. Now I look back at it, is what those 2 years is what it, like, that's where you improve. But then when you get back into it, then you just get on the roller coaster of full-time training as much as you can. So
just to give everybody a kind of reference point, I guess. So you were trying to hit then, in 2014, you were trying to hit 6 minutes for 400. Yeah?
Yeah.
What are you now for 400?
Oh, this doesn't seem a lot, and it's not there yet, but I think it's about 5:13 is what PB. Right, okay. But I need to be going under 5. Megan's told me.
Coach. Megan's your coach.
Megan, my coach, yeah.
But I think there's a really important thing about that. So that was in 2014. You were trying to hit 6 minutes for that. And it's now 8 years later, and you're about a minute faster. And this is the type of things we're looking at. For people that, you'll work the whole winter now to try to get 10 seconds or 15 seconds off your 400 time. That's the game you're in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people will, and that involves swimming how many times a week now?
5 to 6 times a week.
For 10 or 15 seconds off your 400 time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I think when people think about this, they have no appreciation of what is required. I think just in setting the scene before we go and talk about some other bigger deals, just describe your week to people as this new, because you're currently on a
little off season break. In the final few days of it, which I shouldn't be doing nothing, but I went for a swim last night, which I've already been told off for.
By Megan.
Yes.
You shouldn't have recorded it.
No. But yeah, so starting next week, it'll be a Monday morning swim. So yeah, starting winter training at 6 a.m. on Monday to do a swim, and then be working straight afterwards till mid-morning, like lunchtime, and then Monday afternoon will be a bike ride of some sort, whether that be efforts or up to 2 hours, and then a swim in the evening. Tuesday is work in the morning, and then a gym session with Gregor, who sponsors me and is personal trainer, and then a track session on the Tuesday evening, which is only 2 hours of work on a Tuesday, but it's all high intensity and key sessions. And then Wednesday, I have off work, so I like to call it the full-time triathlete day of swimming, long bike ride, massage, and then swim again. So all about recovery and training. Thursday can be some run efforts or a long run and a bike ride, and then working in the afternoon. And then Friday is another day off work and full triathlon mode of longish or efforts on the bike, swim, or can be a run depending on what week it is. And then Saturday and Sunday is usually between the two is 2 swims, a gym, and a long ride or long run on either day, depending on the weather usually. Because if it's raining, I'll run, and if it's not, I'll ride. So unless it's raining on both days, and then I have to suck it up.
And then repeat.
And then, so 4-week cycle of that of 3 weeks, building and maybe adding a session here and there, and then 1 week a bit lower, and then repeat that.
That's
up until,
periodization, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's what they call it.
Until May.
Right. Okay. In terms of so much to talk about, right? And to show people listen, and bigger concepts I want to talk about, but just to get the last of the background stuff. So I remember when you were in, we went to Tenerife to ride our bikes this year, didn't we, in January? And you went for 4 weeks, and I went for a week. And at the end of that week, we went out for tea, yeah, and you had a beer. You'd won, didn't you? You won, yeah. And I had 2. Remember? So I doubled the amount of beer that you had. And that was the first beer you'd had since November, wasn't it? Right. And then in November was the first beer you'd had since probably March or whatever.
Yeah.
Or before that.
Yeah.
And you generally, and I know because Louis is also my daughter Rosie's boyfriend, bizarrely, which was not ever part of the deal. I don't quite know how that worked out. So we know, and I see how you live quite a lot. And so your bedtime is, what's your bedtime?
It was 10 o'clock. I've moved it back to 9:30.
Right,
so
okay.
Starting the new block, it's a 9:30 bedtime.
And it'll be every single night.
Yeah.
Pretty much every single night, yeah. And I've watched you do that, and you stick to that religiously. So you just so that's terrible for Rosie, isn't it? Because that's a boring boyfriend, that, right?
Yeah, she's not even started going out at uni yet.
But so in order to try even have a go at being successful at what you're trying to do, you have to train the way you just described almost all the time, and you have to go to bed at 9:30 and not drink, right? And be careful with what you eat to a degree, right? And so your off season that you've just described, that you just mentioned, tell everybody how long that lasts. Your off season when you finish your last race.
Yeah, so the last race was on 15th of October, and then it was a week of doing nothing, and then this week is supposed to be nothing, but I was allowed to do a little bit of exercise here and there, very little. So 2 weeks of relaxing but trying to get all the stuff around training sorted out.
Yeah, sharpening your sword.
Yeah, so I don't have to do any admin.
Yeah,
when I get back into it. But yeah, 2 weeks is the usual. It can differ from people. Some people don't take any. Some
so you've had a
3.
full week off in October, and you had a full week off mid-season after you did the Ironman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was.
And so
that's not quite a full week off. We did ride on the midweek, didn't we?
Did we?
Yeah,
we
to
did?
flush the legs.
So that's true. So you've had 1 full week of training in more than a year. Yeah, really. Yeah. And so it's just to give people a sense of what you're trying to achieve. And so, excuse me. And so what are you trying to achieve?
So it's starting just to be as good a triathlete as possible. And it will start off trying to get up there in age group podiums overall, and then it'll turn into, the little goals are going pro triathlete, just to get yourself on the ranks, and then I'd like to represent in the world championship races and maybe one day win one, but that's a long way away. That's
So
the dream.
when you say age group for guys that don't get triathlons, age group's amateur triathlon.
Amateur, yeah. So any person from first timer to trying to get your professional license compete in the same race.
And so far, in this routes from 2016, when you were figuring out after what happened in Mallorca in 2016 where you were going and what you were doing, so one of the first things you did was decide to cycle 4,900 miles as a 13/14-year-old, through that year after you lost your dad because he was 49. And so we did kind of a lot of those miles together, I guess, didn't we?
Yeah.
You didn't. I didn't do 4,900. I don't think that year, but we did. And you finished up the Col de Madeleine, didn't you? That was
It was a climb in Mallorca. What's it called? Was it with a monument on top?
Not Sacalobra.
No, it wasn't. I've not done Sacalobra, so I don't know. It's a little one,
right?
The name will come to me.
Well, that's quite fitting, though. I didn't realize it was.
It was in Mallorca.
Right.
I remembered it was a climb, but you just got the name wrong.
Right.
So,
no, I thought it was where you were with Dean.
No, it was well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and so the first thing you did was 4,900, but at that stage you were. I don't think at that stage you were definitely all about triathlon. I mean,
I think I did want to be a professional cyclist.
Yeah.
So maybe it was all about cycling.
Yeah.
But just wanting. Yeah. That's part of it was just getting out on the bike as much as possible.
Yeah. And because this is where we enter into this business of atypical pathways to success, right? Because if you had decided at that stage to be, say, a pro cyclist or say a conventional professional triathlete, then your route would have been to get into British Olympic pathways, really. Yeah?
Yeah.
So for pro cycling, you'd have wanted to go to probably Manchester, yeah? And get into that group of the British cycling group there. And go through regional and then international at that level, and there is a way to try and do that. And then the other way is to go for triathlon is to go into one of the national programs, which is Leeds, Loughborough, and then there's one in Bath, isn't there?
Yeah, Bath and Cardiff as well.
And so would be to get in with those groups, and so that then your life is entirely structured and controlled by that program, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's Olympic distance program. So for explaining to people, so that's the Brownlees, the people that the layman understands, Johnny and Alistair Brownlee in the Olympic gold medal pathway, and that's the Olympic distance, which is 1,500 metre swim and about 40k bike, isn't it? And then a 10k run, right? So 6 miles on the run, 25 miles on the bike, and then just short of a mile on the swim. Yeah. But for whatever reason, you decided, and I think we can talk about that you didn't fancy that structured pathway. I saw and I might be wrong here, but at that stage, watching you and your decision making and what you were going to do at that stage, you thought, I don't want to go into an Olympic pathway, and you didn't chase the avenues of Olympic pathway. Why not?
It was multiple reasons. I think I never really fit into because at the first it's like regional academies, and I never really fit into what they're all about. And for starters, my swim wasn't quick enough, so I wouldn't get in. I tried by proving that my cycling was much stronger than a lot of people that were racing there, but the swim wasn't there. So a lot of the races will come down to the front pack swim will all ride together, and then it's hard to catch up. So that's one of the reasons. And another one was my dad did long distance racing, so I wanted to do that. And that's what attracted me. I was always around it with the Outlaws at Home Pierpoint. So I was going down there for the swim starts and wanted to do that one day. And then doing a lot of cycling, you want to cycle far and go fast for the long times on a time trial bike. So the 56 mile and 112 mile distance on a Ironman or half appealed to me. So I did that. That sort of started it, and then it just became more. Always wanted to go longer. So as soon as you're 15, you can do a sprint triathlon. So I did one straight away. And then when you're 17, you can do a half marathon. So I did it on my birthday. And then when you're 18, you can do a half Ironman. So I did one when I was 18. And then you can do an Ironman when you're 19. So I did an Ironman when I was 19. I've not done a marathon yet by itself. So
well, you have done a marathon at the end of at the end of an Ironman triathlon. So, so you chose this is part of the point of the people that we speak to here. So to you, that's no biggie. That's just, you just decided to take that route. But what you did was you went straight out of left field. You just went straight into a long distance triathlon training program that you invented for yourself. That's what entrepreneurs do. They don't accept the status quo. They go, I don't believe that that's the best product on the market, so I'm going to invent a new product onto the market that serves people better. That's what entrepreneurs do, and they think it's normal, and you think this is normal. You don't think there's anything special about this. You're very much why would you have me on a podcast? And but what people want to know about this is the motivating factors for this and the thoughts behind it, even though you think it's completely normal. Okay, so in giving context to that for the guys that are listening, so Lou, I've watched most of your races, not all of your races, but most of them over the past few years. And so the first thing you did was you decided you were going to try and race in the British Championships. That was last year, right? And so you were going to try and do an outlaw half, which is the half Ironman, which is the 1900 meter swim, over a mile, and then the 56 miles on the bike, and then the half marathon. And your first one of those was the outlaw half in Nottingham, which seemed very fitting, but it was wrong time, wrong place, wrong time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Father's Day wasn't ideal. Family there. It just wasn't on reflection, it would have been much better to do a completely anonymous half one, wouldn't it? Which you ended up doing in Aberfeldy in Scotland, because that was quite anonymous. Because you arrived there as a nobody, never having finished a race, because you got an injury during the outlaw half. So the first half you finished was Aberfeldy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was the Scottish and British Championships. And going back to the age group thing, you race at age group. Now, the age groups in long distance triathlon, middle and long distance triathlon, which is half and full Ironman, are not very big at your age group. The fields are not very big.
No.
And so people could look at that and go, well, that's a bit disappointing because you're not racing against 200 other people. But the fact is that I can say this and you wouldn't say this, but that's because nobody can do it, right? Because you can't develop enough endurance to complete those races as an 18-year-old. Full stop. People can't do it. They've not, and if they're on an Olympic pathway, they can't possibly do it because they're training for shorter distance. And once we had a conversation about apples and oranges when you were doing one of your typical disappointments in performance, and you said, I didn't win that sprint race, and you go, well, that's because you're not a sprinter, right? And so Aberfeldy, tell us about Aberfeldy. That was the British Championships, British Middle Distance Triathlon Championships. It was September 2021.
Late August. Yeah. So yeah, it was in Perthshire, I think. So that, like you're saying, with the outlaw half, there's nobody up in Scotland apart from you guys who come as a support crew. So there's not that much pressure. There's nobody knows who you are, like you said. And I think the main thing was just getting around and finishing, and then seeing what that would produce. So yeah, it was the age groups. It starts off under 20, so 18, 19, and then from there it goes in 5-year age gaps of 20 to 25 and 25 to 29, etc. So there was only, I think, 5 people in the under 20 category. I was the youngest, so I got number 1, which looking back was quite cool. I don't know why I got that. Maybe the reigning champ should have number 1. But yeah, so it was a freezing cold swim in the loch. Loch. And then, yeah, it was proper Scottish weather. It was raining all day. And then I think out of the swim, I was 3rd under 20. And I knew the numbers of who were in my category. And then I passed the first, going into 2nd, about mile 10 on the bike. And I was chasing all day. I passed Megan, my coach, during the bike. And I was just I had no idea how far ahead they were. And then I passed him, Matt Collins, on like mile 30. I think he'd crashed, so he was not stood by the right side of the road, which in your head is disappointing because you want to beat them when they're racing.
Well, you do, yeah.
But like, because he was racing out the half as well, and I didn't finish there, and he finished, so I wanted to race him again. So, but yeah, and then on the run, it was started off well, probably overconfident. Bear in mind, I've not finished one yet, and then in the last 5K turned into just don't walk. The legs are shutting down. I was all over the place, and I thought, so on the running triathlon, you have your number belt and your numbers facing forward, so you can't see anyone's number if they're running in front of you. And the guy ran past tapped me on the back, and they were wearing the same suit as the other guy in my age group who was second. So I thought I bottled this with having to jog, sort of stumble my way to the finish line. And then I finished in all sorts of discomfort and not in a good place. But yeah, then you said you think I won, which I didn't believe at first because I thought that the guy had passed me, but you said I had. So yeah, I ended up winning that for the age group. Nowhere near overall, but that was the first half I did. So
I know, and it's interesting about that because you talk about that quite blasé and go, and you say, well, I was nowhere near the overall. I was an 18-year-old trying to finish my first half Ironman, and I was nowhere near the overall win. Right? All right, okay. But you actually won your age group by the 3.5 miles. So when you crossed the finish line, your nearest age group triathlete was 3.5 miles behind you on the run. So that's quite a margin, and then you became a British champion. So your age group champion at 18, and so that was a big watershed moment. But being typically you getting to the end of that season, you would have looked back and not been entirely satisfied with what you'd achieved.
No, yeah, there's always more. I did one more half after that. I'm planning to do another one, but I got ill straight after the last one, which shows what it does to you. But yeah, it wasn't. You have your targets at the start of the season, and you complete half of them, but you don't complete the other half. So it's just then you just aim the next year. So
so when you set targets, because lots of people set targets, there's a thing there, isn't there? There's the I didn't make my targets, therefore I haven't succeeded. But nobody ever thinks that I might have failed in how I set my targets. That. So we assume that we're exceptionally good at setting targets, and therefore if we don't make the targets, we failed. But in fact, it may be that we're actually very good at what we do. We're just rubbish at setting targets. So there is a way to flip that around, isn't there? And then this year, there wasn't a problem with the targets that you set, was there, in achieving them?
No, I don't think so. I'm learning on writing them down, so because they'll change mid-season, they always do. So then you always know what you were thinking when you set them, because there's a way of getting carried away or unconfident if you're not making what you're thinking 2 days before the race. But yeah, it was just about racing, getting a few more. I was still in the under 20 category, so still trying to get heart under my belt and Europeans.
And so before we go into this season a little bit, we should talk about that, because we should talk about that business of imposter syndrome that you suffer from really badly. So everybody who listens to this and who has any kind of concept about what you're achieving, and we'll talk a bit of detail about that in a minute, is that you're regularly, you'll get to before a race and you'll struggle with your confidence. Yeah, that's reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people will go, that can't be right. How can that be possible now with what you've achieved and what you've done, especially this season? But that will always be something that you will have to manage, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. It happens almost every way.
And it's rare that enough is never enough for you, is it?
No, because at the moment there's still so many people better than me. So it's until you become the best in the world, then I think it's never enough for anyone.
Do we think that will be enough?
Well, I don't know. We'll see if I get there. But at this point, there's so many people quicker than me, and that you want to be like for the next race or next year. So hard to be totally satisfied.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's what drives people on in anything, isn't it? Drives people on in anything is never settling, And then the problem is that can be a little bit toxic as well. But we can go back to think, with you and go, well, why is that? Has it always been like that? Or did 2016 change that? Or did you just grow into the fact that were you always going to be this? Was this always what was going to happen? Or was it as a result of 2016?
What do you mean?
What happened to you in 2016? Is that part of the intrinsic makeup?
I think,
of the athlete?
It's certainly part of the intrinsic makeup, but there's not many other reasons why you could, when you're pushing hard or racing, you always say the why of a business or a person is intrinsic. It's never really extrinsic.
Yeah.
So I think, every athlete's got the reason why they do it. So.
Well, that's Armstrong, isn't it? Armstrong said all endurance athletes are running away from something, which is a really good analogy. And I would suggest that I don't think that's specific to endurance athletes. I think that's specific to people that continually drive forwards. So people who listen to this who are not an endurance athlete, but who are trying to run a business or make something better, or have some aspect of their life that they never give up in, it's because they're trying to prove themselves to some extrinsic individual or symbol or ideal or goal that they feel they have to prove it to. And I think that is, you can often peel back the layers of someone and figure out what that's for. You could, if someone ever interviewed me on the podcast, which they're never doing, you could peel that back and find out what it is for me, because I know what it is. But and so I mean, I'm trying to bask in your glory here by kind of comparing myself to you, which is not really very good, is it? Okay, so this season, there's a few touch points here that's really important this season in terms of, so we're out of any sort of conventional pathway in triathlon now, right? So it's worth, so tell us how you make money as a professional long distance triathlete.
You don't make money as a ultimately professional. It's from sponsors and or race wins, bonuses, race prize money. But it's very hard to make a living as such unless you are one of the best in the field and country or known, or so you've got to have good sponsors to start you off, and then you can hopefully build to become a race winning professional.
And it's a little bit like a chicken and egg, isn't it? Because without the results, it's hard to get the recognition and the sponsors, but without the recognition and the money, it's hard to get the results.
Yeah.
Because to travel to Mallorca to race in a Challenge Series race costs money, and to have a bike that is worthy of your ability costs a significant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to have a pair of trainers that you can only wear for how long? 50 miles?
Well, you can push it to 100, but anyway, it's over £1 a mile. For some
on the trainers that you wear for
trainers.
racing in, right? So it's an expensive sport, you know, and of course so clearly at some point during this we're going to plead people to send you some money, because it is that type of thing, isn't it? We need support, and you need support for what you're doing. So you can't make, it's hard to make money at it, so you've got to work as well. So you're now doing that thing where you're working part-time in a proper job to try and fund to stay alive, to allow you to chase your dream. And this is proper minority sport, isn't it? This is like proper. It's not professional football. You know, it's not professional basketball in America. It's not somebody goes through college and then gets signed for 100 million. It just doesn't happen. And so clearly your motivation factors here can never be related to financial, because you can't see a route where you're going to be super rich doing this. But that doesn't matter, because that's not why you're doing it. And actually, with people who come through atypical pathways of success, any money that they get for the stuff that they do tends to be a side effect of what they do. It's never, ever, that I've seen, the reason why people do it. And you know, go back to even the people that we've just spoken to here, the Ronnie Youngs or the Gurmit Samras or Sarah Symington, they're never about chasing money. None of them were, you know. And just because, you know, and Ronnie's doing pretty well these days. But he drove the bus in Zurich, the hop-on, hop-off bus for tourists in Zurich. You know, he did all sorts of different things in his backstory and never came through a conventional channel of success. So guys, normally in this little interlude in the podcast, we would talk about one of our courses or a sponsorship opportunity. But today, I'd like to ask you to consider supporting Louis Dunne. Being a professional triathlete or budding professional triathlete is almost impossible due to the cost of things and the dedication that's required and the fact that you can't work full time. So if you would like to sponsor Louis or help Louis to achieve his goal and be part of Team Louis Dunne, then why don't email me at colin@campbellclinic.co.uk. So this season, right? Mm-hmm. 4 significant races this season. We say 4?
4, yeah. That sounds about right.
Yeah. The first one, Outlaw Half.
Yeah, Nottingham.
Right. So a return to a scene of destruction.
Yeah.
The year before was Carnage. So I'll always remember the car park the year before, right? And because you didn't finish. And I was racing, in inverted commas, in that race. I was doing a relay, wasn't I? So I was out on the bike, clearly, you know, and I was assuming that you would all be finished by the time I got off my bike and be able to clap me in off the bike. But when I got back off, Mike, who was running for us, I said, "Where is he?" You know, and he said, "Have you not heard?" And you'd actually been taken off the course in an ambulance, hadn't you?
Yeah.
which is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's a
And
little
a
bit
needed
broad.
course. Yeah.
But so you returned back this year
Mhm.
to try again, which again is an extraordinary thing, to be able to just go back and go, right, do you know what? And I did really feel, because that was one of those races where I was down at Home Pierpont with you at 4:30 in the morning or whatever it was. And I was nervous of that race. I was frightened of that race because I thought, you got to get this monkey off your back, and clearly you were good enough and you have everything in your locker. But this is where all the aspects of this stuff, the psychological aspect of this stuff comes in, because there's demons to fight and that kind of thing, didn't there? And so what happened there?
Yeah, it was a similar time to last year. So it's just about trying to improve on the times from 2021. And it wasn't, I didn't have the best lead up. It was another mess the week before, but it was a case of, it was a time trial start. So I missed the front pack, which is now the aim for next year, because there's 8 or 9 guys that came off together that were running together for the race. It's what you want to be in. But it was a good day out. It was positive in terms of improvement. But yeah, it was under 20 category, so I managed to take that again, but take the win for the category. But
Yeah,
once again, the overall just not quite.
Yeah, because you're 19, and then the overall winner's 29 or something. And who was it won it? Kit?
No, Jack Hutchins won it.
But but you won the age group by 4.5 miles this time on your second outing, right? So you're on the lake at Home Pierpont as for almost 2 laps at the end of that race, don't you?
One, not half Nottingham.
Uh-huh.
No, you do 3 laps with sort of.
Well, you were a lake ahead of the winner, more than a lake ahead. So when you came through the finish line, he was like, they were miles away. So that was a great success. Monkey off your back. Never have to race that again if you don't want to. Can if you do, but that you tick, done that, right? Time for that was
4:20
for that, right? Yes, mental. And then a hugely significant thing in July. So for so many reasons, July was a significant thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Outlaw Full, so the same venue and organisers as the half Nottingham, but the full, so the same distance as an Ironman, even though you can't use that word associated with
Iron distance.
The full distance. So yeah, it was, my dad was going to do that when he was 50 the year after 2017, so for his time. And I always thought Ironman Nice was going to be my first full distance.
Because that's when your dad completed.
Yeah, that's the one, the only one.
Because he carried you down the finish chute there.
Yeah.
I remember that story, but you had a little plastic stirrer that come from your mum's coffee, right?
Yeah.
And
wouldn't let go of it.
You wouldn't let go of it, and then you dropped it. And as he was carrying you down the finish chute in his glory of finishing his first ever Anders, you were wailing and screaming to try and get the plastic stirrer back, I remember.
I think I was all right for the finishing photo. Got that. But yeah, so that was it.
Do you have that finishing photo?
Yeah.
All right. I need to see that.
So yeah, that was 24th of July. My coach Megan thought I was a bit, when I said I was doing it, she didn't know quite why. But I knew the run fitness wasn't there to complete it well, to race it the whole way. And I was expecting to slow down, and the aim was to get to 18 miles and without walking, and then could let myself walk a bit. But yeah, it was the swim, when you're in longer, especially in amateur, my swim that isn't very good at all, and my shorter distance or around the same age becomes slightly better. So I moved up. So I was in 7th overall for 50 miles of the bike, and then had quite a big dip around mile 80. Luckily that I had a tailwind at that point. So I got to the feed station, got off, just gave myself 2 minutes, and that probably saved the race in that sense of being able to get on and somehow find some legs. But came off the bike and won a marathon, didn't even think about the distance. So I mean, loads of people from work, family, friends, all around the course, because it takes over a lot of the Trent. So yeah, it was, half marathon was really good. Probably went off a bit fast, definitely too fast, is what Megan says. And then projectile vomited at mile 16, which over the suspension bridge, which anyone,
dramatic. I mean, it's a good venue for that.
Yeah, so anyone that doesn't know that bridge knows it's not very wide. It's probably 2 people wide, and I took over most of it by bending over and being sick. Not quite over the river, and not quite over the path with people walking over. So yeah, and then we found some legs after that, but the last 6 miles is 2 laps around Home Pierpont. I've seen the same bit of tarmac and no scenery, so that was horrendous of walking / shuffling for however many miles. I wasn't thinking at that point. So Yeah, and then cross the line in just under 10 hours. So
which is
9:55.
extraordinary. We've never seen anybody, and then the 19-year-old to do an Ironman in 9:55 is just
Yeah, supposedly it's the course record, age group course record.
Yeah.
For under 20.
And so many, first ever Ironman as a 19-year-old trying to chase professional triathletes like Sam Long. And he's the only other one we've seen that's done that sort of thing, yeah. And but also the significance to you personally about that, which was that very much mimicked or seen mirrored in the photographs as you cross the line and stuff like that, which were really special actually. They were brilliant. And so that came out the way, and then the next thing to do was to do the European champs. So you couldn't go back and defend your British championship.
No, because it's on the same weekend. But yeah, the British champs win took qualify me for the Europeans. So we went out there as a Bilbao, which nice place but hard to get to. Flying into Barcelona and then driving all across the country to get there. So, and it was once again a championship race, which is far away, and you're sort of only with yourself and nobody knows who you are, which is a good thing, I find. But yeah, that was bittersweet, that race. I was up there overall racing, felt like I was in the race. And then the last 10K, the one had some stomach issues, which dropped me down the overall as I was gaining. But won the age group, which was also, there was only 4 people on the start list, and I think only 2 finished, 1 got disqualified. But which is also annoying because you want to, like I said, you want there to be more people that.
Yeah, but that's only because they can't. And so now you're European under 20s middle distance triathlon champion. Mm-hmm. So last year British, now European, and then finished off with just a little holiday jaunt to do a half Ironman in Mallorca for Challenge Mallorca, and finished third in the under 25s.
Yeah, because Challenge races they don't have the longest is all under 25. So that's a pro field. So.
Najee's tapping the time for me because the time just vanishes, doesn't it, when we chat like this? And so the things to finish off with, just what keeps you going. Okay, let me rephrase that and help you with that, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry to interrupt. I got the chance to ask questions to Chris Hoy once, and I struggle with, if ever I'm going to train in anything, it's getting out of bed. And I should have been swimming this morning, but I wasn't swimming, and because it's easy for me to talk myself out of not doing it. So what we want to know is, we want you to help us, to tell us how we do that. How do you get out of bed? What keeps you going?
It's hard to put a finger on one thing. I think I know what you're saying about Chris Hoy, because you said you don't want to do it every day. It's there's the 3/3 thing of a third of the time you feel good, a third of the time you feel average, and a third of the time you won't want to do anything at all. And that's the thing. But there's a lot of reasons that it's doing it for the intrinsic motivation. It's doing it for the people that support me. I've got a great group of sponsors and support, so they're investing in me, that you have to do it for. And when you don't want to do it, it's just about finding the why, almost treating it as if you've got to do it. It's your job. It's like, in dentistry, you've got a patient to see. It's not like you can just not turn up. So, and don't get me wrong, there's times where you have to listen to your body and give it a rest or miss the session.
That doesn't happen very often to you.
But motivation is not always there. But I think discipline is what. What makes
so it's good. That's helpful, isn't it? Because you don't like it every day.
No,
but you do love it every day. Mm-hmm. And I think you do. And I think that's borne out by the fact that when you're supposed to be having a week off, you go, I'll just go and do a drill swim on Monday night because I want to, And and I think the Louis Dunne of old and older would have missed that swim, And the Louis Dunne of 2014 or 15 wouldn't have gone and done that swim.
You would have thought that, wanting to do a swim.
Well, that's progress. And so what's next?
So just sorted out the calendar for next year, which is 6 halves and then a full of Ironman Nice. And it's just, the main goals are to try and be in the races. So with the top guys going for their license, and I know I'll maybe not there next year. The pro license goal is 2024, but being in the race with the guys, swimming with them, cycling the group, and then running with them, and knowing that you'll get battered sometimes, and very unlikely that you'll beat them, but you have to know how to race and to win to then actually do it. So
how many pros did you beat in Bilbao?
4, and then 5 or 6 in Mallorca. But it's how the British field is so strong.
Yeah. So you have a mission, yeah? You know what you want to do. And somebody really clever in business once told me that what we focus on becomes successful, and other people get fractured in different directions. Me particularly, running after shiny bright objects here, there, and everywhere. But you don't run after shiny bright objects. You just stick to the mission, and that's why you're being so successful. And so we have a thing at the end of the podcast where we say, if you could go back to have a conversation with your 21-year-old self, which is a bit of a problem for you because you're not 21 until February.
No, 20 in February.
You're 20, yeah, Jesus. February 2024. So you're 19 still. So it's a slightly different framed question for you. I would take you back to, and this is deliberate, so don't answer this if you don't want to. I would take you back to Christmas in 2016. And after everything you've learned in the last 6 years, what would you tell Louis Dunne in 2016?
Just keep believing and dream big. There's a note on a cycling book that I got given in Christmas 2015 from my dad, and it said, "Dream big because you never know." So that's probably what I'll just keep going. Nobody ever knows. So
should we all do that?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much.
That's right. Thank you for having me.
So blimey, that's quite a story, and it's always interesting in these discussions that they always go in directions that I didn't expect. So if you thought that you were hardworking or dedicated or were putting in a shift to make yourself the best at what you can do, then perhaps you might have learned what dedication really looks like from listening to Louis as a 19-year-old who's putting all of his life aside, more or less, to try to chase his goals and dreams. I hope you enjoyed that. It was fabulous, and for me, and we'll look forward to Chris Dakin, who's coming next, who's a bit of an occlusion specialist who's coming to visit the practice, but we'll also have stories to tell about how he got to where he is.